Imagine the woman you've spent months caring for, the one you're madly in love with, the one whose every glance meant something to you, suddenly disappears one morning without a single trace. When Jake opened his phone, that middle-aged female voice, he had no idea his entire world was about to collapse. The message was simple, 3 words: "We need space." Then nothing, complete silence. She was gone. My name is Dr. Emily Carter. I've seen heartbreak in every form imaginable, but Jake's case taught me something new about the invisible wounds we carry, about how a beautiful face can hide the cruelest intentions, and about how good people can lose themselves completely when someone decides they're no longer worth a goodbye. Jake was 32 when he first walked into my office. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Dark circles under his eyes, wrinkled shirt, hands that wouldn't stop shaking. He sat down and just stared at the floor for a full minute before speaking. When he finally looked up, his voice cracked. "I don't understand what I did wrong." That's how it always starts. The confusion, the desperate need to make sense of something that has no logical explanation. Jake had been dating Olivia for 8 months. They met at a coffee shop in downtown Seattle. She was a marketing consultant. Gorgeous smile, quick wit, the kind of person who lights up a room just by walking in. Jake was a software engineer, quiet, thoughtful, the type who remembers your favorite coffee order and leaves little notes in your lunch bag. Their relationship seemed perfect. At least that's what Jake thought. Weekend trips to the San Juan Islands, late-night conversations about their dreams. She met his parents. He met hers. They talked about moving in together. Then one morning, she sent that text and vanished. No calls returned, no texts answered. Her social media went dark. She blocked him on everything. It was like she never existed. But here's what Jake didn't know yet. Something far more devastating was happening beneath the surface. The first 2 weeks after the ghosting, Jake functioned on autopilot. He went to work, came home, stared at his phone. He must have typed and deleted 100 messages. Did I do something wrong? Can we just talk? Please, I deserve an explanation. He never sent any of them. Pride maybe, or fear. Fear that even his begging wouldn't be enough to get a response. His friends told him to move on. "She's not worth it, man. Plenty of fish in the sea." But they didn't understand. It wasn't just about losing Olivia. It was about losing himself. Every time his phone buzzed, his heart raced. Every time he saw someone with her hair color, he froze. His chest felt tight constantly, like someone was sitting on it. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything. That's when the panic attacks started. The first one hit him during a team meeting at work. His vision blurred, his hands went numb, he couldn't breathe. His coworker Brandon had to walk him outside. "Dude, you need to see someone," Brandon said. "This isn't normal." But Jake brushed it off. He convinced himself it was just stress, just a phase. It would pass. It didn't pass. By week 3, Jake was having panic attacks almost daily. He'd wake up at 3 in the morning, drenched in sweat, convinced something terrible was about to happen. He started avoiding social situations, stopped going to the gym. His apartment became his prison. And the worst part, he was still checking Olivia's Instagram through a friend's account, still hoping to see something, anything, a sign that she thought about him, that he mattered. But what he found instead shattered him completely. Photos, new photos, Olivia at a restaurant, smiling, laughing, with someone else, a guy Jake had never seen before. The caption read, "Best night ever." The date? 2 days after she ghosted him. 2 days. Jake's hands trembled as he scrolled through the comments. Friends congratulating her, heart emojis. "You two are so cute together." He read every single word, torture disguised as information gathering. And then he saw something that made his stomach drop. A comment from 3 months ago, from the same guy, with a heart emoji. 3 months ago. while they were still together. That's when Jake realized the truth. She hadn't just left him, she had replaced him, months before she ever sent that text. If you've ever felt that kind of betrayal, hit the like button, because what happened next is something nobody should face alone. Jake spiraled fast. He called in sick to work, then sick again, then he stopped calling altogether. His boss eventually texted, "Take the time you need, but you need to get help." Jake didn't respond. He barely left his bed. Days blurred together, unwashed dishes piled in the sink, mail stacked up unopened. His mom called. He didn't answer. Her friend stopped by. He didn't open the door. Depression had him in a chokehold, but it wasn't just sadness. It was something darker, more insidious. Every thought circled back to the same questions. Why wasn't I enough? What did I do wrong? What does that guy have that I don't? The questions became obsessions. The obsessions became his entire identity. He started analyzing every moment of their relationship, every text, every conversation, looking for clues he missed, red flags he ignored. He created timelines, drew connections, convinced himself that if he could just understand why, he could fix himself, become better, become worthy. But here's what I wish Jake knew then. What I tell every client who sits in that chair. The why doesn't matter, because the why was never about him. It took Jake 6 weeks to finally reach out for help. He found my practice through a desperate 3 a.m. Google search. Why does ghosting hurt so much? How to recover from being ghosted? Am I going crazy? The search history of someone drowning. He filled out the intake form at 4 a.m. Appointment request urgent. When he walked into my office that first day, I knew immediately this wasn't just about a breakup. This was about trauma, about abandonment, about a fundamental rupture in his sense of self-worth. Jake didn't just lose a girlfriend. He lost his ability to trust his own judgment, to trust that people mean what they say, to trust that he's worth staying for. "Tell me about Olivia," I said gently. And he did, for 45 minutes straight. Every detail, every moment, every text message he could remember. When he finally stopped, he looked at me with this desperate hope in his eyes. "So what did I do wrong?" I took a breath. This was the crucial moment. The moment where I could either reinforce his self-blame or help him see the truth. "Jake, what if I told you that you did nothing wrong? What if the problem was never about your worthiness?" He laughed, but it was hollow. "Then why did she leave?" "Because," I said carefully, "some people are incapable of healthy attachment, and that has nothing to do with you." The look on his face told me he didn't believe me. Not yet. But that was okay. Healing doesn't happen in a single session. It happens in tiny increments, small realizations that build on each other. And Jake was about to learn something that would change everything. Over the next several sessions, we started unpacking Olivia's behavior patterns, not to demonize her, but to help Jake see the relationship clearly, without the rose-colored glasses. He told me about the times she went silent for days, then came back like nothing happened. The times she made plans and canceled last minute. The way she'd be intensely affectionate one week, then distant the next. The subtle put-downs disguised as jokes. "You're so sensitive. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? You're being dramatic." These weren't quirks, they were patterns. Patterns consistent with what psychologists call anxious avoidant attachment style, or in more severe cases, traits associated with narcissistic personality patterns. People who crave attention and validation but can't sustain genuine intimacy, who see relationships as transactions, who discard people when someone new and exciting comes along. "But she seemed so perfect at first," Jake protested. And that's exactly the point. That's how it works. The love bombing phase, the intense connection, the feeling that you finally found your person. It's intoxicating, addictive, and completely unsustainable because it's not real. It's a performance. The real Olivia was someone who couldn't handle vulnerability, who ran when things got too real. who needed constant novelty and validation. The ghosting wasn't about Jake failing, it was about Olivia's inability to face discomfort, to have hard conversations, to treat another human being with basic respect. But understanding this intellectually and feeling it emotionally are two different things. Jake's healing wasn't linear. Some days he felt strong, empowered, ready to move forward. Other days, he'd see a woman who looked like Olivia and fall apart. He'd have setbacks, moments where he checked her social media again, nights where he'd draft texts he'd never send. This is normal. This is part of the process. Recovery from emotional trauma doesn't follow a neat timeline. What Jake needed was to rebuild his sense of self, to learn that his worth isn't determined by someone else's decision to stay or leave, to understand that healthy love doesn't make you smaller. It doesn't make you doubt yourself constantly. It doesn't require you to be perfect to be worthy of basic communication. We worked on practical strategies. When he felt the urge to check her social media, he'd call a friend instead. When the panic attacks started, he'd use grounding techniques. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste, bringing himself back to the present moment, away from the spiral of what-ifs. We also worked on boundaries. Jake realized he'd ignored several red flags early on. Times when Olivia was dismissive of his feelings. Times when she flirted with other guys in front of him and called it harmless. Times when she made him feel like his needs were too much. He'd learned to minimize himself, to take up less space, to be easier, less demanding. This is what happens in relationships with people who can't handle your full humanity. You learn to shrink. Never again, we decided. From now on, if someone makes you feel like you're too much, they're not your person. If someone can't communicate openly and honestly, they're not ready for a real relationship. If someone disappears without explanation, that's not a reflection of your value. That's a reflection of their character. But here's where Jake's story takes an unexpected turn, something I didn't see coming. 3 months into therapy, Jake got a text from Olivia at 11 p.m. on a Saturday. "Hey, I miss you. Can we talk?" Just like that, after months of silence, like nothing happened, like she didn't completely destroy him. Jake stared at that message for an hour before calling me. "Emergency session." "What do I do?" he asked, and I could hear the panic in his voice, the hope, the fear, the dangerous cocktail of emotions that comes when your ghost comes back. This is what narcissistic individuals do. They come back, not because they realize what they lost, but because their new supply didn't work out, because they're bored, because they want to see if they still have power over you. It's called hoovering, like a vacuum trying to suck you back in. I asked Jake a simple question. "What do you want to happen?" He thought for a long time. "I want closure," he finally said. "I want to understand why." I nodded. "And if she can't give you that, if she makes excuses or turns it around on you," he was quiet, "then I guess I'll have my answer." We role-played the conversation, practiced setting boundaries, decided what he would and wouldn't tolerate. Jake was nervous but determined. He agreed to meet her for coffee. Public place, daytime, exit strategy planned. He was going in with his eyes open this time. The conversation lasted 20 minutes. Olivia spent most of it talking about herself, how hard the last few months had been for her, how confused she'd been, how she needed space to figure herself out. She barely asked about Jake, barely acknowledged the pain she'd caused, and when Jake asked directly, "Why did you ghost me instead of just talking to me?" she got defensive. "I didn't ghost you. I told you I needed space. You're being dramatic." There it was, the gaslighting, the refusal to take accountability, the rewriting of history. Jake felt that familiar tightness in his chest starting, but this time he recognized it. He used his tools, deep breath, grounding, and then he did something that changed everything. He stood up. "Thank you for meeting me," he said calmly, "but I think we're done here." And he walked out. For those of you watching who've ever taken your power back from someone who hurt you, subscribe to hear more stories like this, because what Jake did next is the real victory. He didn't text her later, didn't apologize for leaving, didn't second-guess his decision. He sat in his car for 10 minutes, hands shaking, adrenaline pumping, and then he smiled. A real smile. For the first time in months, because he finally understood. The closure he needed wasn't going to come from her. It was going to come from him, from choosing himself, from walking away from someone who couldn't see his worth. That was 6 months ago. Jake is in a different place now. He's back at work, reconnected with friends, started going to the gym again. He even went on a few dates, though nothing serious yet, and that's okay. He's not in a rush. He's learning to enjoy his own company, to build a life that feels full even when he's alone. The panic attacks still happen occasionally, usually when he's stressed or tired, but they're less frequent, less intense. He knows what they are now. His nervous system's way of protecting him from perceived threats. It's not weakness, it's his body trying to keep him safe, and he's learned to work with it instead of against it. Does he still think about Olivia sometimes? Yes. But not with that desperate longing, not with that crushing self-doubt. Now when he thinks about her, he feels something different. Gratitude. Not for what she did, but for what it taught him. About boundaries, about red flags, about his own resilience, about the kind of love he deserves. Because here's what Jake learned. Real love doesn't ghost you. Real love doesn't make you question your sanity. Real love doesn't require you to be perfect. Real love shows up, communicates, works through the hard stuff. Real love doesn't make you smaller. It helps you grow. Jake's story isn't unique. Ghosting has become an epidemic in our digital age. It's easier than ever to disappear, to swipe left on human decency, to treat people as disposable. The psychological impact is real. Studies show that ghosting can trigger the same pain centers in the brain as physical injury. It can lead to depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress symptoms. It can shatter your self-esteem and make you question everything you thought you knew about yourself. If you're going through this right now, if someone has ghosted you and left you wondering what you did wrong, I want you to hear this clearly. It is not about you. Their inability to communicate, to show basic respect, to handle discomfort like an adult, that's about them, their character, their emotional maturity, or lack thereof. You deserve better. You deserve someone who chooses you every day, who communicates when things get hard, who sees your value and doesn't take it for granted. And until that person shows up, you get to be that person for yourself. You get to choose yourself every single day. Jake still comes to therapy once a month. Maintenance sessions, we call them. Check-ins. He's building something new, something stronger. A foundation built on self-respect instead of external validation. He's learning that being alone isn't the same as being lonely, that his worth isn't determined by someone else's inability to see it. Last week, he told me something that made my therapist's heart sing. I was at a party, he said, and this woman started flirting with me. She was beautiful, interesting. We talked for hours. Then she asked for my number, and I gave it to her. We've been texting all week. And here's the thing, Dr. Carter. I'm not obsessing over her texts. I'm not analyzing every word. I'm not waiting by my phone. I'm just enjoying getting to know someone without losing myself in the process. That's the real victory. Not finding someone new, but finding himself again. Becoming whole enough that another person can add to his life instead of defining it. Ghosting isn't just about one person disappearing. It's about all the ways we can lose ourselves trying to hold on to someone who's already gone. It's about learning that sometimes the trash takes itself out. And that's not a loss. That's a gift. A painful, devastating gift, but a gift nonetheless. So here's my question for you. Have you ever been ghosted? Have you ever lost yourself trying to understand why someone left? Drop a comment below. Share your story. Because healing happens in community, and knowing you're not alone, and seeing that others have walked this path and made it through. Jake made it through, and so can you. The panic attacks might not disappear completely. The scars might not fade entirely, but they become part of your story, part of what makes you stronger, wiser, more capable of recognizing real love when it shows up. Because now you know what it's not. Remember, you are not too much. You are not unworthy. You are not the problem. You're just a good person who trusted someone who wasn't capable of receiving that trust. And that says everything about them and nothing about you. Hold on to that truth. On the hard days, on the days when you want to reach out, on the days when you question if you'll ever feel whole again. Hold on, because you will. I promise you, you will. And when you do, you'll look back at this moment and realize something powerful. The person who ghosted you did you a favor. They showed you exactly who they were, and they freed you to find someone who knows how to stay.